Hello and welcome. You're watching us here on a fresh new episode of a fresh new season of Mad About Markets. I'm Manglam Malu. With me as always, Ritu Singh. I'm always in high spirits, jumping around and all of that and stuff. Ritu, but you're particularly excited about this one.
Well, I don't know if I'm particularly excited about this one, given how you're always in high spirits. But yes, it's about time. We are talking about the alcohol beverage market in India growing at a phenomenal pace.
The show's aging. We've done a lot so far. So it's about time that we talk about something which is mature. No specific reason, but just take a look at the Indian alcohol industry. We're seeing a boom of homegrown alcohol beverage makers. You just walk out of your house, get into a restaurant or a nearby bar, you see Indian gins, craft beers, fine wines, whiskey brands. Then in the stock market itself, you have two new players which are likely Sula and Allied Blenders looking to go public. They've already filed their papers. So the industry is certainly in high spirits. The Indian alcohol sector, that's on top of mind. Ritu.
As always, we'll begin with the number crunch to put things into context. Now, the global alcoholic beverage market, that was valued at $1.5 trillion as of 2021, and it is expected to go all the way to $1.7 trillion by 2027, growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 2.7% between this period. Now, shift the spotlight to India, and the per capita consumption of spirits is one of the highest among the top economies, only behind USA for India, but the per capita consumption is far lower when it comes to beer and lower still when it comes to wine. So India predominantly is a spirits market with more than 90% of the alcohol that is consumed in the form of spirits.
90% in the form of spirits. That's more than double of what the global market is. In fact, if you just take a look at the alcohol market globally, it's divided across three major categories of alcoholic beverages. So 44% of which comes in from spirits, which does include whiskey or anything above 40% alcohol, 33% beer, 14% wine, and 9% are the others. Now, if you just take a look at India, one of the fastest growing alcohol markets in the world, among the top economies, the percentage drinking population of the world is close to around 42%, and the same number for India is 33%. That's as of now. But going forward, by 2025, this number for the world is likely to settle at around 40%, and that for India is likely to grow from 33% to 39%. So not only is it a 6 percentage point growth, it's also growth on a growing population. That's a big market.
It is a big market, and let's address it with the players who are tapping into this opportunity. We have Shekhar Ramamurthy, the CEO and Executive Vice Chairman of Allied Blenders and Distillers, which is India's third largest Indian-made foreign liquor player in the market and is looking to go public very soon. Also with us is Ankur Jain, the founder and CEO of Bira 91, an Indian craft manufacturer, and Anand Virmani, who is the co-founder and CEO of Now Spirits. He represents the gin manufacturers. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here. Shekhar, let me begin with you. Spirit is the dominant alcohol form for the Indian market. What is the size of the opportunity according to you?
Okay, so when you say alcohol market, you're clearly talking both beer and spirits. So I represent the spirits part of the business. And in spirits, and India is largely a spirits market. And all spirits, just for abundant clarity, are sold at 42.8% by strength, alcohol by alcohol. And India is predominantly a whiskey market within spirits. You know, about 65% of all spirits sold in the country is whiskey. Traditionally, if you leave out the COVID period, the spirits market has been growing at a steady mid to high single-digit number. And our anticipation is that now that COVID is over and the rebalancing of consumption and the markets are going to take place, the steady state growth we again see going back to our mid to high single-digit number.
All right, so the post-pandemic dip is now slowly normalizing, and that's exactly the question for Ankur. Ankur, beverage companies are experiencing a normal summer after 2 years. What's the consumer response been so far? The current growth rate after 2 tough pandemic years?
You're absolutely right. This is year 3, and this is the first summer in 3 summers that we've had, which is pandemic-free. Consumers are going back to bars and restaurants, which is where a lot of beer is consumed. And industry has recovered back to pre-COVID levels. So we're very hopeful for the upcoming year in terms of volume growth and so on for the industry.
You know, Anand, what's interesting about the Indian market is that it is dominated by a few players in each of the categories, if you talk about them, which leaves very little share for newer players. You are one of those new players who's trying to make a dent in the market. What is your go-to market strategy to capture more share? And do you think scaling up beyond a point is going to be a challenge?
So, yes, it is, of course, terribly difficult. And the only real way, the proven ways that we've seen people come into the space has been spending a lot of money. And I think Bira was a good example of that in a space which is totally dominated by Kingfisher and likes. Bira was able to come in and really create a niche and operate within that niche, which was just premium to Kingfisher, etc. For a long while until Kingfisher decided to respond, and they responded with the likes of Ultra and Ultra Wheat and all that. So it's certainly very difficult to challenge the larger players, which is why large players have traditionally succeeded. And even for us, when we joined, when we started the gin business, it was a bit of a daunting one to say that we're definitely going to get crowded out by the likes of Blue Ribbon or Gordon's or Bombay Sapphire for that matter. But I guess because gin, if you look at it from a macro perspective, because gin was only 1%, we were kind of given freedom, or people didn't necessarily look at us with that much seriousness until it got to a point where we were already starting to dominate in the bar space and the off-trade space. So not so much in M&A, but recently, for example, we got a minority investment from Diageo or USL. So it's good in that sense that we've been able to kind of build a brand without necessarily getting crowded out. Not that attempts were not made to kind of elbow us out of the market.
We'll take your point, Anand, and thank you for narrating the Bira story to us. But hang on, gentlemen, we'll come back to you in just a bit, because now we're going to talk about the alco beverage market in India, which is, by the way, the third largest market in the world after China and the United States in terms of volume of actual alcohol content in these beverages. It is also the largest Western spirits market in the world. So from about $21 billion as of 2015, it grew all the way to $33.3 billion in 2020. Then, of course, we saw the pandemic dip, and it is now expected to touch $43 billion, close to that, by 2025. This is as per a Technopack study. Now, the market is very much dominated by spirits, in which Indian-made foreign liquor contributes close to 68% in value terms overall, followed by beer because of the larger volume, 16%, and country liquor, 13%, followed by the others. So that, in sum and substance, is how Indians consume their alcohol.
That's the formal market, so I would assume that country liquor in the informal market would be a lot more. But that's a telling stat. 7 out of 10 bottles are Indian-made foreign liquor. Indian alcohol market has been dominated by the high alcohol content spirits, and which is what makes it the third largest market in terms of the total alcohol which is consumed. But if you just take a look at the market, from close to around 727 million cases in 2010, it went all the way up to 1 billion cases in 2020. There was a bit of a dip, so it's currently close to around 890 million cases, and it's likely to go ahead and cross 1.2 billion cases, or 1229 million cases by 2025 itself. The Indian alco beverage market is projected to grow at a compounded rate of 8% in volumes for the period FY21 to FY25. And how does that compare with the world? 1.5%. The global volumes will grow by that much in the same period. So the Indian market is actually growing much faster than the global market and is projected to grow even faster. Anand, the market is very much dominated by beer and whiskey, spirits, so to say. What is the future of gin in a market like that? It's been growing, but how much can it grow?
I think the reason I said I was worried about Blue Ribbon and Blue Moon, etc., was because they were the only dominant players, and really, they were the established brand. I mean, was it premium established? No, but can you maybe create a high-end Blue Ribbon? That's really not for me to say. But we were unsure of whether bars who were pouring Blue Ribbon would gravitate towards a brand which they would have to pay 2 times or 3 times the amount for. And thankfully, that's happened. So really, in terms of the future of gin, obviously, you're talking to me, and I would definitely say that it's looking great. The reason I say that is because of the way we've been tracking consumer demand. It's not going away, and it's not something which kind of at a peak of interest and then kind of dies out. It's something that that is real, that is consistently growing year on year, and we're seeing growth across the market.
Okay, from gin, let's go to beer again. And Ankur, we heard from Anand earlier how Bira disrupted the market, forcing Kingfisher to come out with new brands. How did a young company like yours get the brand building right and distribution right to be able to capture the market? And what's been your go-to strategy?
So our strategy has been to really focus on a few markets, but get to double-digit shares in those markets as quickly as possible. While we are present in over 30 states, almost 80% of our revenue comes from 8 states, and that's deliberate and that's by design. I think it's a very tough market given the complexity of regulation, given the sort of interstate barriers that are there in this industry. It's not a very easy market to get critical mass in, and therefore for new entrants, I think one of the key strategies to deploy is to ensure that you have a strategy to enter into multiple states, but get to critical mass and defendable market shares as quickly as possible.
So now that the industry is so big and so is the potential, what are the players in the market doing, or what are they making? As per Statista, the total revenue in the alcoholic drinks market in India amounted to close to around $47.5 billion in 2022, or that's what it's likely to be. It is expected to grow annually by roughly 9%, high single digit, as Shekhar spoke about, to cross $61 billion by 2025. So that's the kind of market that we're looking at in India. Well, the Indian spirits market is controlled by the top 2 spirits companies of the world. We have Diageo as well as Pernod Ricard. The top 3 players in the spirits market control close to 50% of the market, and that's actually the case in all the other segments as well. The top 3 beer players in the market control close to 80% of the beer market by volume, and similar is the case for wines as well. If you take a look at the wines, the top 3 players, which is Sula, Grover as well as Fratelli, they have 80% of the wine market by value. There is a long tail of players in each of these segments with regional strong players, especially in the spirits market, and then there is plenty of players in the listed space too. Of course, the biggest of them all we know, United Breweries as well as United Spirits. We have Tilak Nagar Industries, GM Breweries from the broader markets as well. Radico Khaitan has been making a lot of strides. And then we have Associated Alcohol and Breweries too. 2 new players looking to go public, and we have one of them with us. Shekhar is with us.
That's right, Shekhar. Actually, you've already filed your papers for a 2,000 crore rupee public offering. Could you tell us what the timelines are and what your plans on that front are?
Yes, indeed, we are seeking to raise about 2,000 crores. Half of it will be offered for sale by the promoters, and half of it will be a fresh issue, which will come into the company. The time frame is difficult to say because at this point of time, SEBI takes between 75 to 90 days to come back with its queries, and we have to respond to it. And that is the time that we are in right now. Thereafter, once we get a go-ahead from SEBI, we will evaluate the situation and file the IPO, the RHP appropriately. But we are working with some of the leading bankers, merchant bankers. We have ICICI, Axis, Kotak, and JM who are advising us on this issue. So we will take an appropriate decision in consultation with the bankers as to the right time. But in general, the reason we have filed the DRHP at this time is we believe it's the right time. We believe it's time for us to move from being a 100% private company to list the stock exchanges.
Take your point, but Shekhar, you've been an old hand. You've worked at some of the bigger companies as well in the past. So tell us about your ability to gain market share with the company that you're in currently. Is it getting tougher at the premium end and more commoditized at the lower end? What's your strategy?
It's a brands business. At the end of the day, yes, the alcohol business has its own peculiar rules and regulations because we are governed by state excise. But if you were to leave that, you as a consumer, when you go to a bar, when you go to a retail shop, your consumer behavior is perhaps no different from what it would be if you were to buy some other consumer non-durable. So it's a business of brands. So to be competitive, we need to see the trends. We need to talk to consumers. We need to keep our brands refreshed and desirable to consumers. So I always say that a company is only as successful as consumers allow it to be. So we need to be there. We need to be constantly innovating, investing in our brands. Obviously, we need to have infrastructure, we need to have capacities, and all that is a given. Anybody can do that. But a successful company is the one which has brands. And you mentioned about whether it's becoming commodities or, no brand is a commodity at no price level.
All right, take your point, Shekhar. In fact, we'll take a short break on that note. On the other side of this short break, we will discuss the yays and the mays of the alcohol industry.
And as always, we'll ask the bigger question, and that is there enough opportunity in India's alcohol industry despite regulatory challenges? That and more in just a bit.
Welcome back. You're watching us here on Mad About Markets. We put the spotlight on the alcohol industry in India. And as always, we talk about the yays and mays of the industry. Ritu, it's a new season, but old habits. I will still go with the yays.
We know you need the wins, so why don't you get on with it?
Let's go with the wins then. The yays. The biggest one, of course, is the demographic dividend. 33% of India's population is of drinking age right now. That number is going all the way up to 39%. And as that grows, we have income levels of people growing as well. So that means that with people who are moving, to urban cities more, their income growing and they are more eligible to drink, they will go ahead and drink. And what are they drinking? They're drinking the better stuff. So premiumization is one of the trends that we're witnessing in this industry. A lot more people having a lot more disposable income to have better alcohol, and all of that through a new channel of sales that we discovered during the pandemic, which was basically in-home consumption, home delivery. And now that people are having alcohol at home, they don't have to spend extra money that they do at restaurants. So they use that money to buy better alcohol, and that is what talks about premiumization. And finally, everyone talks about how there is a ban on advertising on alcohol in above the line media. Well, they have found newer ways. Digital media is one of them, and the second one is there are so many events that are taking place, so they partner with that and make their products known.
But why is the ban there in the first place, right? So that is the flip side. The abuse of alcohol is perceived as one of the leading risk factors worldwide and has a direct impact on health. Alcohol beverage industry has also been saddled with the extra burden of regulations because of the perceived effect and abuse of alcohol. These policies have everything from control on production, pricing, storage, movement, consumption, you name it. Now, complete or partial prohibition exists in many states in India, from Gujarat, Bihar, all the way to Nagaland and Mizoram. Also, states in India observe dry days on major religious festivals and occasions, unique only to the Indian market. And of course, foreign liquor imported in India is charged under customs duty, and beverages bottled here are subject to excise and other duties as per the rules of each state. So the burden of regulation and high taxes is definitely a may.
That is a big may. So let's take that question then to Shekhar Ramamurthy. Well, Shekhar, there are high taxes, there's prohibition in some states. Every state has its own tax policy for alcohol. What are the challenges for the industry? It is not an easy industry to be in.
The biggest challenge is regulation. So, like I've said, the regulatory framework is very complex and not very friendly. Why do I say that? Because we have to navigate rules in each and every state. No other business in India has to do that. And that makes it very complicated. And the state has a disproportionate control over our business. So that's one of the biggest challenges. When I mentioned about societal mores in Bollywood, and the advantage of that is that when we talk to bureaucrats today about policy, they are receptive to us. Many analysts ask us, what do you see as a difference today between, let's say, 5 years back or 10 years back? And I would say that when we talk to regulators, when we talk to bureaucrats, they're more receptive to us. They would listen to you. I'm not saying they make it much easier in terms of rules and regulations, because and you talk to anybody in our business, they'll probably say the biggest challenge in our business is the regulatory framework.
Okay, so regulators are more receptive today, but nonetheless, Ankur, let me come to you. What is the future for young companies like you? You started out as a brand that was a challenger to Kingfisher. We heard that earlier from Anand. You made white beer, and then you started out selling draft beers. Will smaller, newer guys like you have to do the same? I mean, where do you think you went wrong in your strategy, if at all?
I think the idea behind launching new products, whether it is wheat beers or launching beers on tap through draft, has been one of finding white spaces in the marketplace, finding things that consumers want, but that the competition is not focused on. And I think that's really helped us go a long way, because if you look at our business and our scale today, we are definitely the fourth largest beer company in the country, behind the big three. In several states, we are actually the number 2 or the number 3 player already. And when you look at premium, we are the number 1 player on draft beers, we're the number 1 wheat beers in the country, we're the number 1 IPAs in the country, and so on and so forth. So I think finding that point of difference and executing around it is very much almost a necessity and a requirement for emerging players such as ours.
Well, you are a number 4 player in the country, but remember, this is a country where we have a long tail of products, with the mass being with the top 2 or 3 players itself. But let's talk about, marketing your products. Anand, there is a ban, above the line advertising, ban on alcohol. How do you then market a new product? Is that a challenge? And have you used the internet as a result of that?
Yes, of course, sure. There is the above the line ban on on advertising on TV, for example. But my argument would be that as a small player, maybe that's beneficial for us, because in any case we would never have the budgets to to go advertising during the IPL or whatever else. So that's not a path we would have taken regardless of the ban or not. Social media also is great, but it can also only take you so far. I think there's this understanding that social media is the end all of getting a brand out there. Whereas really in this space, especially if you start looking at the craft or the premium end of things, what really works is on-ground events, is large scale, small scale. Liquid to lips, as we call it, is actually getting people to try your spirit, try your beverage. That's really proof of concept, and then you let word of mouth kind of take over and build momentum.
All right, it is time now to ask the bigger question, and that is there enough opportunity in India's alcohol industry despite the regulatory challenges? Let me come to you, Anand. What do you believe? Is there going to be a cap at some point, or do you think there is ample opportunity for growth?
It's difficult to say there won't be a cap. I'm sure there will be a cap. What's happening right now is the size of the pie is increasing exponentially. So for all of us, it's great. We're all friendly. We're all we all have a great relationship with each other because all our businesses are growing, and long may that last. And ideally, I think that's the right way to approach this, as opposed to trying to then undercut each other and try and grab whatever little slice of the pie that's left. So I feel the excitement from the consumers actually enabling the producers to continue focusing on quality, as opposed to getting into price wars and those kind of things, which potentially were detrimental to, especially to the wine space in India. So there is ample opportunity right now. I feel that should last, at least as far as we can see, which is maybe 3 to 5 years down the road. That should last, and that should just keep growing from strength to strength.
Shekhar, what do you feel?
The society doesn't really look down upon alcohol, so there is acceptance. 2, economically, our country is going to grow. We are still a very poor country. 3, and this is something which I wouldn't shy from mentioning. Alcohol revenue is very important to the states. This is one of the most significant revenue earners for each of the states. Like I said, it's part of the state subject. So the fact that there is economic growth, the fact that the society doesn't frown upon alcohol, but is acceptive of alcohol, the fact that revenues from alcohol are important to the state, all these, and apart from various other trends that are happening in the country, to me are indicative of the fact that this is a growth business. Of course, I think, and I want to say this, we as the alcohol industry are very mindful of the fact that we have to be responsible. And what do I mean by responsible? We shouldn't promote alcohol to underage. We shouldn't promote binge drinking. We shouldn't promote drink and drive and various other things which are not good for society. So whilst I say that there is growth opportunity and we will definitely take part in it because of the socioeconomic factors which I mentioned, but in a responsible manner.
Okay, we've heard from the gin and the whiskey makers. Ankur, you have the final word.
No, I think the Indian market is deep enough and it's big enough, right? This is a category, if you just look at beer is larger in terms of value by compared to all soft drinks put together. So whether it's carbonated soft drinks like Pepsi and Coke, whether it is ready-to-drink juices or other soft beverages, the money that consumers spend on beer in India is higher than the money that they spend on soft beverages. And this is a market that's been growing at 10% CAGR. And this is despite the fact that on a per capita basis, when you look at beer, India is nearly 1/15 of other emerging markets such as Vietnam, Thailand, China, etc. So I think there's tremendous headroom, and we expect that the beer market will more than double in the next 7 to 8 years, from about $8 billion today to about $20 billion by 2030.
Ankur, Anand, Shekhar, thank you so much for joining in and throwing light on this sunlight industry, or maybe post-sunset industry, if you should. Thank you and cheers, gentlemen. On that note, we will wrap up on this edition of Mad About Markets. Stay tuned.